Aloha and welcome to the April Hawaii Public Health Training Hui's webinar, Breathe and Let Go, Mindful Forgiveness as a Daily Living Skill to Live Life on Purpose. My name is Steph Moyer and I'm the Community Initiatives and Training Coordinator with the Hawaii Public Health Institute. I'd like to introduce you to other organizers of this training, Makamai Namahoi, Hi-Fi's Programs and Operations Coordinator, as well as the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui's Steering Committee. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few Zoom housekeepings. For all questions, please utilize the chat box or question and answers box located at the bottom of your screen. All webinars are recorded and will be available on the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui's YouTube channel. I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors and partners for today's webinar, the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui, the Western Region Public Health Training Center, the Public Health Learning Network, as well as the Hawaii State Center for Nursing. We have been approved for continuing education credits in 5 areas. We have CHES, RD, social work, CSAC, and very excited to have our nursing credits back for this training. To receive your continuing education credits, you must first attend this webinar. After today's webinar, I will send you an email with a link to an evaluation. You must complete this evaluation in order to receive your continuing education credits. The survey will be open from today until close of business on Monday, April 19th. If you are calling into today's webinar, please send me an email at stephanie@hifi.org and include your name and phone number used to dial in today. If you have not received your certificate after 2 weeks, please send either myself or Maka an email and let us know. Nursing disclosure, the Hawaii State Center for Nursing is accredited as a provider of nursing, continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation, and the Hawaii State Center for Nursing designates this activity for a maximum of 1.5 contact hours. Further disclosures: to receive any credit, nursing credits for today's webinar, you must attend live, you must claim credit commensurate to the participation in the activity, as well as complete a separate nursing evaluation form, which I will also provide the link to. Today's presenter, Joey Reese, is the director of the Mindful Forgiveness Center and CEO of Moxie Fitness. The speaker will keep her education free of marketing or sales of products and services, agrees not to solicit or recruit educators for any purpose, and will not share learner information with the identified commercial interest organization. Today's learning objectives: by the end of this presentation, participants will be able to describe the importance of mindful forgiveness, identify the 7 steps to forgiveness, and lastly, practice 3 ways to cultivate mindfulness. It is my honor and joy to introduce you all to Joey Reese. Joey is the director of the Mindful Forgiveness Center and Chief Executive Officer of Moxie Fitness. Joey works directly with state and nonprofit agencies to facilitate mindfulness, forgiveness, and resilience workshops throughout Hawaii. Filtered through her powerful personal journey and informed by over 30 years of work with youth at risk and professionals who work with high-risk populations, she has designated programs, workshops, and presentations that seek to make the biggest impact in releasing suffering so that we can respond more skillfully in our professional and personal lives. The Mindful Forgiveness Center is driven by the mission to help people cultivate mindfulness and practice the art of forgiveness, because these are foundational skills that lead to success in all other areas of life. And it is my honor to turn it over to Joey.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I feel very honored to be here with you folks. I'd like to just say that I'm used to seeing people's faces at these and interacting a little more. So I'm just gonna relax that I can't see faces and go on forward, trusting that you are doing the exercises and activities that I'm asking you to do. While we are interacting, I might ask for some comment and feedback in the chat box. Please engage as much as possible. But before I really dive into the content, I do want to take some time to mark our time. So just take notice of where you're coming from. It's Friday, middle of the month. So what are the things that are occupying your time, your energy, and your ability to be present here? Are you multitasking? Are you kind of having this on the backside over somewhere, kind of listening while you're actually focusing on your day-to-day work? And is it possible for you to put that down just for a moment? And this moment to take time to see, like, what kind of space are you in? Just look around your space, ground yourself in your seat. Notice the smells that you smell. What noises do you hear? I hear a lot of chattering birds outside my window right now. Can you kind of just widen your senses just a little bit? As I ask you, what's your relationship to your breath been like today? Yeah. Have you even taken notice? What was the very first thing you did when you jumped out of bed this morning? Did you take time and stretch like all animals do? You know, have you ever seen your puppy get up and just kind of start doing? No, a lot of them like spend time stretching a little bit, breathing, yawning, opening their mouth, like really engaging in their bodies. So what have you done to prepare for that day? And if you haven't done anything, let's take a moment right now. So maybe you're stretching a little bit, really deciding to be present. And then when you're ready and you settled in and really take a note of your body and your position, your space, I invite you to lower your gaze or close your eyes if at all possible. If you're driving, please don't do that. Yeah. But come to some stillness. And that space that's at the lowest part of your belly, see if you can breathe from there for a few moments. In through your nose, allowing that lowest part of your belly to expand. And then on your exhale, allowing that lowest part of your belly to deflate. And just take a few full and deep and smooth and complete breaths and see how you feel. And I have my bowl here that I'm going to invite to ring, to signal and mark our time here together. So just if your eyes are closed, go ahead and listen for the sound to dissipate as you're engaged with your breath. For all of you who are able to participate, thank you and welcome. It's important to mark time, mark space, mark transitions, and really feel that sense of welcome into whatever space you're entering. So if it's leaving work and going home, what do you do to mark that transition so that that work worry isn't dragging behind you as you go home and embrace your family? Yeah, and vice versa. What are you doing to mark the beginning of your work and service to others? And then you can leave your friends and fun, that energy, just leaving it behind so that you can fully be there for your clients or for yourself, or for your boss or your team. Yeah. Taking that time and being intentional about marking that space is important. So consider that as you, and we'll do it again at the end of our time together. Yeah. So notice how that feels for you, because that is a part of living on purpose and not just getting caught off guard from place to place, or so that you are not split in your energy. You know, when you arrive at some place, but you're like, wait, what did you say? You missed the whole welcome. You missed the whole part because you were still thinking about that phone call. So often we're split like that. And that has the potential to breed unhappiness, breed overwhelm. Yeah. So notice if you decide to be fully present, how that might change your day without even doing anything else. And now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and start. Those of you who have received the PDF version, um, the the information is going to be the same. Maybe it'll be in a little bit different order. It'll definitely be in a different color. Yeah. But a lot of this information you have received in the PDF. And you are welcome to take screenshots if you have that capability. If you can't on your computer, you just grab your phone and take pictures of whatever slides you're like, ooh, I need this again. You are welcome to do that. So welcome to Mindful Forgiveness. We're going to be talking about mindfulness and the skill of forgiveness as foundational daily living skills. So how can you, without attending a 6-week workshop, without having any other conversation with me, how can you implement some of these things in your day-to-day life going forward from right now? That's what I'm interested in providing here today. So the first question is, as I was thinking about you folks, thinking about where you might be coming from, thinking about why you might sign up for something like this. And then also, as I'm considering all of the other reasons I've heard from the other places that I've spoken, the questions and the comments and the concerns that I get over Facebook and different communities, is that people are feeling overwhelmed, burned out, compassion fatigue, overburdened, can't grasp onto this thing called happiness. That's what I get a lot. So I'm wondering for you specifically. So just answer as I'm asking in your own mind, and maybe you're throwing it into the chats. It's up to you. But what's missing? What's missing right now? And that question is really open. So however you're hearing that, what is the predominant chatter that's going on in your mind that follows you from home to work to fun times, that's dragging you maybe down, that feels a little bit loud or noisy in your mind? What's your predominant chatter? What would help make you feel better right now? Like, what are the things, if you said, okay, you have an extra hour, what's the thing that's going to make you really happy? How do you focus your day? Like, what are you focused on majority of your time? Yeah. And then do you spend any time kind of being your own observer or being your own witness? And as I ask that question, anybody going, wait, what? What do you mean by that? Yeah. So maybe that would be a no. Yeah. But maybe some of you guys are saying, yeah, I'm observing myself all the time. And maybe too much. Maybe there's a detachment of the body that's doing the work and the observer that's chattering behind. So I just want to take a note of where you are in this present moment and why you might be called to be here. And then see how some of the information I'm going to share might fit in to alleviate some of the stress or the burden and allow a little bit more room for this thing called, happiness. So many of us are out here seeking happiness. And I'm sure you've heard the quote, it's a choice and just grab it. And happiness is within your grasp and you got to create it and make it, right? But it's also very elusive. So this thing called happiness, if I refer to it, this is what I mean, and this is what I'm talking about today in this setting. When I say happiness, it's about the combination of the intention that we have for the way that we live, then what I pay attention to from day to day, moment to moment. It's the quality of the connections that I have to my people and my purpose, and then how willing or able I am to savor each moment. And each moment is right now. Like, how willing am I able to savor this moment, knowing that I just said, oh, I'm not used to not seeing people, right? But my quest is, can I still savor this moment? Yeah, and my ability to do so and still connect with you, because I know there are people on the other side of this camera, and my purpose, which is this, talking about ways that people can embrace a little bit more happiness, make room for a little bit more peace, make room for a little bit more joy. That is my purpose. So how well can I connect with that, even though I can't see people's faces? What am I going to pay attention to today while I'm talking? And what's my attention here? So that combination, the more that we can lean into, I intend to be happy. I'm going to focus on the things around me that make me happy. And I'm going to lean into the people around me. And I'm going to savor these moments while I'm sharing my purpose. The more that I can lean into that, the happier I can say that I am. Yeah. So what do you think about this definition of happiness? And then this breakdown What are you assessing for yourself? What kind of mind chatter is coming up? And then can you come back and let it go for right now? So this idea of happiness, I mean, we are not at a loss for all the good ideas here, self-help books, all the research that tells us what we're supposed to be doing to live our best life and to achieve this thing called happiness, right? Right now, I'm sure you guys are all watching on some sort of laptop or some sort of tool that'll allow you to access all of the information on the planet, basically, right? More information that we've ever had before. And on top of that, in your pocket, you have another device. So simultaneously, you can Google research. So if you looked up like how to live the best life, how to live life on purpose, because that's what I'm talking about today, right? I bet you would have never ending lists of answers and research and all the ways that point to how to do that. We're not lacking for information. We're not lacking for research. What I do notice is that we're lacking for practice and maybe a simple order. And then this encouragement around practicing it, because knowing it is enough. So much of our information gets stopped right here and then it cycles and it just adds to the mind chatter. But how do we bring it down and embody it and then have it ooze into the rest of our life? Whether it's work, whether it's family, everything in between. That's the key, I think. So I think years ago, I mean, this is not new stuff. Years ago, people would have told me the same thing. Yeah, Joey, if you just wanted to be a little bit more happy, this is what you need to do. And I would be so mad. I'd be like, God, they don't know the life I've had. They don't know what I'm dealing with. They don't know that I've got 3 kids at home and I'm juggling all this by myself. And I had a litany of all the complaints to why I couldn't do these things. And you could call it complaining. And there's a lot of, I mean, yeah, I was complaining, definitely. But also I was having to deal with all the truth that just came out of my mouth. I was dealing with a lot. And I was dealing with a lot of stuff that happened in so far in the past when I didn't have the skills to manage it. And so if we don't have the skills to manage it, it's going to follow us no matter what. And time does not do any work around healing. It's going to still come with us. Yeah. So this thing, and I know a lot of you guys might be coming from the health professional world. So when I use the word trauma, certain definition and image is going to come to mind. But I want to, just like happiness, tell you how I'm going to be using it. I'm going to skip over this because you guys already got that in the intro. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. These are the objectives. So why mindful forgiveness is important, 3 ways to cultivate mindfulness, and then identify and explain the steps to forgiveness work so that you can implement it right now if you wish. Yeah. So back to this thing, trauma. The way that I am using this here is it's an event, circumstance, or something that has happened in our life, a moment in time that has created separation within us from a felt sense of safety. And that safety is physical safety, emotional safety, spiritual safety, psychological safety, all of the different ways that we humans need to feel safe. That's an event that has separated us from that. Or a sense of dignity. Yeah. That ability to stand up tall and take ownership of our life, this event that separates us from that feeling. Or belonging, that feeling of separation from belonging. And as humans, yeah, we're communal beings. So any sense of separation is going to feel traumatic for us. So when I say the word trauma here, I'm talking about an event that has, boom, created that separation, which is different than the way that I use the word suffering. Suffering, which is then the ongoing storytelling of how I perceive that traumatic event. Yeah, so it's an ongoing state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. So there are some stories in my past that when I think about, I'm adopted. I was adopted at an older age. So there was a time when I was with my mother, my birth mother. Like that was my mom until 8.5 years old. And then all of a sudden I was separated from my country, my language, my sense of who I was, my culture, my food. So that boom, traumatic event happened for me around the age of 9. But the story that I told about that event allowed me to suffer for almost 40 years Because then I would start talking about my mom didn't want me because I'm unlovable. I'm just this, I used to use the words throwawayable. I'm just this throwawayable thing, right? And that's how I would explain all the failed relationships in my life. And no matter how I can seem together, that stayed with me, that suffering. And then the echoes of that suffering and the way that I told my story and the events of the traumatic events and the combination of the two shows up in our lives as echoes. And it takes up a lot of space. And so some of the ways that these echoes of those traumatic events and suffering, the way some of that shows up for us, I'm going to give you a list here and just see if you see yourself in any of these. You resisting positive change in your life? Do you have a need for complete control and you feel very overwhelmed and a lot of anxiety if you don't have control? Do you have a deep sense of failure and also an aversion to success? Yeah, that those polar opposite things but are happening in tandem in your life. How about a lack of concentration and you always blamed it on like bad memory? Yeah, an inability to ask for help because I'm independent, I can do this on my own, I'm strong. All of those words that seem positive, but underneath, I really know that I cannot ask for help. Yeah. Or do we separate others from their sense of safety, dignity, or a sense of belonging? So in that way, are we harming others or do we continue to do that to ourselves? These might all explain that we might be carrying around stories that we thought that we had gotten over, that we thought we had it under control, but these echoes are showing up in our lives. And the proof is in the way you feel about it. Yeah. So the way that one person talks about this might not be your story, but the proof is in your body and in your life. So you might be saying, well, I like having control. Yeah, that's not the issue. How do you feel about that? How heavy does it feel for you? Does it take up a lot of space? Does it prevent you from having close relationships in your life? The proof is in your body and in your life. Yeah, so we don't have to argue those facts, but do any of these echoes show up for you? And if so, then then you're human. If so, then we are all like playing, this is part of the scenario or the formula that happens in our brain, is that we look around and say, this is reality. But what actually is, it's a perception of what's happening. And I've put some words to what I think my reality is. And then I will put that against what my expectation is. So in my story, some of my reality is that I'm this kid that's throwawayable. And so I'm this adult that is not lovable. That's the story I told about my adoption. And the expectation is that, you know, my mom should have done whatever it took. If she could figure out a way to keep me for 8 years, she should have done whatever it took to keep me for the rest of my life. What's wrong with her? My expectation is that mothers should keep their kids. It doesn't mean that it's logical, right? I'm just telling you how I chose to suffer. And I use that word choice, and I'm going to explain that in a moment. But it's in that separation that I was able to create in my mind that really then I can suffer. Then I can say things like, God, why me? Why did she throw me away? Yeah. And I'm not taking into account all the other people that have been adopted in the world, including my own brother, right? There's this me nature of our very that part of our brain that makes it all about us. Yeah. So that's going to come full force in an effort to protect me. That's my brain. It's an effort to protect me and keep me alive. But nevertheless, it says things like, why me? Why did she throw me away? And then I think about it a lot and I ruminate on it, taking up a lot of space in my world. And then whatever happens as a result, I'll blame her, my mother, for all the things that are going around wrong in my life. When a relationship fails, I say, see, I don't know how to love because my mom threw me away. It happens in a split second so quickly in my mind, the way that it just happens. But this very thing, that scenario, you might be able to recognize in your mind right now. Yeah, this thing is what we call suffering. That, our brain, that's what we call suffering. The event has happened a long time ago and it's ended. And I can point to the fact that event, that traumatic event of adoption, That separation from family of origin, language, culture, all of those things has happened to hundreds of thousands, millions of people, right? Not everybody reacts in the same way. Not everybody suffers in the same way. But I can tell you that I suffered as a result. And that's because of my brain and the way that, and I lacked the skills at the time to manage it. Yeah. And so suffering shows up in a lot of different faces, in a lot of different ways. And then we put on our professional hats and our mothering hats and our, I've got it together. I'm fine. I'm strong. I'm hanging in there. I got it together. We all walk around and put on that face. And underneath, we're carrying that burnout, compassion fatigue, that overwhelm. Yeah. So do you see yourself here? And in what ways are you coping? Are you surviving? How are you handling that thing that's underneath, that big old iceberg that's underneath you? Yeah. So for me, I was like that control freak. I'll just do it all. I'll never ask for help. That's how I managed it. Because if I let somebody else in, they're going to start doing a little thing and then they're going to boom, abandon me. And then I'll be stuck holding the bag. And so that was my reasoning. But on the surface, it really looked like strength. People used to tell me all the time. And even now, oh, Joey's so strong. She's so independent. Yeah. But what they were pointing to were my egos. And every time I heard that, it would hurt a little bit because then I could say, see, nobody really knows me. Nobody really knows me. And I took all of that to work, helping at-risk youth feel better, live better, and live their life. Oh my gosh, the hypocrisy. And then I get this other layer of feeling shame and guilt. And then still I get up and I show up for work and say, how can I help you? Let me show you that which I don't know myself, that which I don't practice myself, but let me show you, right? So some of you guys might be feeling some of this. So I'm going to ask you to just hold it lightly. Connect to that breath that's in the lowest part of your belly. See if you can breathe and let go and then come back because we're here to learn a few skills and practice a few things together. Even if it's just a reminder to breathe, go ahead and do that and see how differently you might be feeling before you remember to breathe, because a lot of us hold our breath. And after we engage in that safety breath, because when we allow our breath to engage in that way, to expand with that lowest part of our belly and contract with our exhales, it signals to our brain that, oh, I might be safe here. And then it'll stop releasing all those hormones that are no good. Yeah. And what I'm talking about right there is mindfulness. So mindfulness is both a state of being. So we encourage each other to be mindful, yeah, in that way. And it's also a practice. So having a mindfulness practice. So mindfulness is about paying attention to this present moment. Like our present moment right now is that we're all engaged in this workshop together. So paying attention to the present moment, being aware of this present moment, not floating off into the other things that I have to do, the million things, the things that I've forgotten, the things that I feel shame for. Oh, this moment, being aware of this moment, no matter what, without judgment. And so often, a lot of us feel good when things are going good. Yeah. We're like super present and like we can do the things when things are going well. The key is what about the times when everything is going awry, right? That client is just not doing what they want to do, when the emergency room is in just short staff, no one's doing what they're doing, all the noise is beeping and going. In that moment, when there's life and when there's death at the balance, in that moment, can you be present in that moment and aware no matter what, without judgment? So most of us here, we live in a time capsule. We live in this time machine. Yeah, all of us. So let me ask, like, how many of you guys drove to wherever you are right now this morning? And how many of you guys recall that drive? How many of you guys are so familiar with the drive home that you get there and you're like, oh, wait, did I even make that stop? I don't even remember taking that left turn. Yeah, because we have automated this body to do some work so that our minds can go off where? Into the past and into the future. And a lot of times it is negatively skewed. So we're reliving a a bad moment that we could have done better, or we're reliving something that happened to us a long time ago. We're like trying to figure out things in the past and in the future. And a lot of happiness research says that even if you are drifting off out of time, so out of this present moment, out of this body, if we're drifting off, even if that's a good thing. So you're planning your first post-COVID trip to Alaska and you're super excited about it. So you're spending all your work time. The only way I can get through that work time is planning my trip. So even if it's a positive thing, the fact that you are out of time decreases your chance for happiness. So the more out of time we are, the less less happiness is at our grasp. So what do you think about that? Paying attention and being present in the moment, no matter what. So even if you're in the present moment and the present moment sucks, like everything is going just wrong, if you are there in that moment, your chances for happiness goes up. Yeah, odd. Presence is everything. So the challenge is, no matter what, can you be present and connect with that breath? Yeah, because that's the anchor point, is your breath. That breath that we talked about during our check-in and chime in, and that I mentioned just after we talked about trauma and suffering. Connecting to that breath. So here, I would have asked all of us to do a 3-minute practice together, but I'm not quite sure what your conditions are. So I'm going to give that to you as homework. Yeah, should you choose to accept it, is if you have a mindfulness practice, excellent, please continue. If you are not clear on what I'm talking about, see if you can right now put in your calendar 3 minutes where you can sit in mindful meditation. And then I'm going to give you some tools right after. So 3 minutes, you're jotting that down. Today, right before bedtime, I'm going to do 3 minutes. Maybe right after this workshop, I'm going to sit for 3 minutes. Yeah. And in that 3 minutes, you want to remain curious and open to all that's happening. That's including thoughts, emotions that might be rising up for you. Remain curious so that you can let go of judgment. Because the overall impact of mindful meditation is all of these things. But mindful meditation, by its definition, is non-striving. So we don't sit so that we can get better focus. We sit just to be with ourselves no matter what. Even if I'm sitting and the whole time I'm going, Joey, don't think. Oh, here I go thinking. Breathe. Okay. Oh, there's another thought. Oh, just breathe. Oh, but I got to make that list. Joey, breathe. Even if that's what's going on in my mind, that is excellent. That's exactly the practice. That is how we're going to develop this way of building more gray matter up in our brains, working on some firing synapses together that we want, that'll increase focus, decrease anxiety, more creativity, more compassion. All of these things happen with you being present with yourself, no matter what's happening, without judging yourself for that. Yeah. Even if some of the thoughts are judgmental thoughts, to let go of that as soon as you are aware of it. That's the practice. Yeah. So this non-striving ability to be with yourself in the moment, no matter what. The more that we practice in safety, so right before you go to bed, right after a shower, in the comfort of your home, when there's no noise or a little less distraction, the more able you are during those distracting times when things are really, a hot mess. You're cultivating your ability to be more mindful through this practice. So the formal practice is the actual sitting. Yeah, so mindfulness of breath. So focusing on that breath. Allow yourself to be guided until you're able to do it without any guides. Down below are some apps that I highly recommend. UCLA Mindful app is all free. As some of you guys might know, Calm has, like the upgrade version. And so the Stop, Breathe, Think. On YouTube, Stop, Breathe, Think now is called My Life. And there's a lot of free videos and learning activities. But UCLA Mindful app is all free. And there's some more research related, this is why. So some of you fact finders who need things linked to research, go for it. Yeah, there's a lot of good information and it's linked to the professionals who have actually done the research. My theory is that, the research is good, but test it out in your body and see if it feels good. And then look around in your life and see what kind of improvements or what you notice in your life. That's where I like to see the proof. Oak also is free, and that's my personal practice. So if I need a timer or if I need some guidance, I use Oak. So think about which one you might want to practice today. Each one of them will have a short 3-minute practice, and they will all have one around anchoring on breath. So 3 minutes today. When I'm working with teens or youth, my first go-to mindfulness practice is a body scan, because when you're doing mindfulness breath, we tend to sit up and we tend to be in circles if we're in group together, which feels threatening for kids who don't know you, feels threatening for teens for sure. It's like, who's watching me? What's happening? And a lot of kids, if I have them sit in circles, will try to make each other giggle, or somebody will make a fart noise, or somebody will poke somebody's nose or nostrils or pick each other. That's all good, because part of it is acceptance no matter what. So as an instructor, I sit there and I do my practice, even if all that's going on. But it's easier if they do a body scan, because some of that can be done laying down. So if you have a yoga mat, or they bring a towel, they lay down in a circle with their heads inside of the circles, feet pointing out, and then do a body scan. A lot of them will fall asleep, because most of us are sleep deprived. And all of these good ideas, you guys, if we're sleep deprived, the greatest gift we can give one another is an opportunity to nap. So that includes right now. If right now you're sleep deprived, all this good information, oh man, it's not going to be as good as you getting your sleep. So I always give people permission to fall asleep. So in a body scan, if you fall asleep, that's okay. If you're going to try this with kids, the other thing I like to add is, if you fall asleep, that's okay. When we're done, I will wake you. So what I'll do is just tap your foot. And when you feel me tap, just take a deep breath and keep your eyes closed. And then we'll all come back out together. Because what we don't want is for people to be all calm and then you tap them and they go, right? And get all scared. That's for adults too. So a body scan, maybe you want to practice this with your kids at home tonight before bed. It's a beautiful practice. And another formal practice that that a lot of research around, like shifting our mindset, is gratitude practice. So there are apps that'll guide you around gratitude, but gratitude practice is key. Loving kindness is a practice that I really love and definitely incorporate into my workshops. But somehow figuring out what you can be grateful for, and to sit and do a formal practice around that. A lot of us used to do that maybe around a dinner table. Maybe we only reserve that around certain times and certain holidays, but it's something that you might want to institute, maybe even in your drive, as you're driving your kids somewhere, or you're riding with your partner, or before your coworkers, before a team meeting. I would chime in, but also incorporating some sort of gratitude. What's going well? What's really like having you like feeling good? Tell me one thing that made you smile or laugh or giggle. Yeah. What are you really grateful for? That practice has been, it really, the research around that is pretty spectacular in terms of what it does for our brain and the way that we're able to see life and kind of open up our blinders a little bit. Yeah. So these 3 formal ways of practice I highly recommend. And this is for all of us. The research around the brain stuff, we can see the changes happening at around 20 minutes after 8 weeks of practice, but you build up to that. So if you start going, okay, I'm going to do that because, you said that was the best. I'm going to sit for 20 minutes, but the whole 20 minutes sucks for you. I don't know. I think kindness trumps all of that. So if you set a timer for 20 minutes and after 1 minute, you're like, oh, I'm over it. Kindness above all else. You say, good job for sitting for 1 minute, and you get up and do something else. Yeah. So this shouldn't be a chore and a shoulding. Don't add this to your list of shoulding on yourself. Yeah. So allow this to be a natural part of your life. Build up to those 20 minutes. Unless you're busy, then you want to build up to an hour. All right, you guys, day-to-day ways to cultivate mindfulness. So that's the formal ways to sit. But if you're like, I don't know, I'm not sold on this quite yet. How many of you guys washed your hands today? I hope that's everybody. At some point today, you've washed your hands. Yeah. How many of you guys remember the sensation of washing your hands today? And what do you think about that? The next time you wash your hand, really be present. So as you turn on the water, and maybe you turn on the hot water too, so that you get the perfect temperature, and you're waiting for that, like feel the water. Smell the soap as you pump, and then notice like what it takes for it to start lathering. Yeah. And what the lather color is, how far up your arm it goes as you smell it. And then who made that? How many hands went into allowing you to be able to do that? Think about the years, the time, the energy, the sweat that went into putting in the pipes that allows you to get clean, hot, cold water at a touch of your hand. What a miracle. We currently live in a planet where there are people dying right now because they can't have access to water. Yeah. And here we are. So is it something that we can be grateful for? Because shame and guilt tend to be the least of all helpful of emotions. Yeah. So it's not that we need to feel guilty for the life that we have. It's that we need to be grateful. And it's every moment, mundane moments like washing our hands. So be in the moment, because that'll help cultivate mindfulness. When you drive home tonight, really drive home. Notice your route. Maybe take a different route. Notice the other drivers. Yeah. What does it mean to be fully engaged in all the day-to-day mundane activities? And then the last piece is when you feel yourself ruminating. So the thoughts, like we're just like these bobbleheads walking around, right? Those thoughts excrete, right? These feelings that your body can feel. And then it'll either help you let go, or it'll turn into some things that we don't want, including disease. So embodying feelings so that it doesn't get stuck and turn into the Dead Sea where it doesn't have outlets, and then we could become salty and really low. Breathe and notice when I'm thinking these thoughts, what am I feeling in my body? What is my heart doing? What is my temperature doing? Yeah. What is my leg doing? Is it bopping up and down? How relaxed is my lower back? That's where I tend to clench up for me. What are my shoulders doing? Yeah. So embody the thoughts that are happening and then see what that does for you. So 3 ways to cultivate in our day-to-day lives, because those are foundational. Before then, we can do all of this other stuff. So everything else you build on top of that, all the curriculum that we spend millions of dollars for every year, it's like if we have not figured out how to regulate and how to co-regulate with each other, that means calm ourselves down so that we can open up our blinders and really see and savor and be in that moment. So that is done through the breath. So if we haven't done that, no matter what curriculum it is that we're trying to teach one another and give to one another, it's like if we take like a priceless pebble, that's the curriculum, and we're whipping it into the stormy, tumultuous, like raging ocean. You don't know where it goes. You don't know where it falls. You don't know the ripples. You can't see nothing. Yeah. So I see that happening again and again. We spend all this money and complain about how much money we spend, and we're whipping it into this like whirlpool of nonsense. So above all else, to me, it makes much more sense, and you're going to get so much more bang for your buck if you help each other regulate and do this mindfulness practice. If you only did that, that's going to give you so much return. Test it for about a year and tell me what you think about that. Yeah. So regulation first, and then I'm going to teach you this thing called forgiveness. And the forgiveness work, all of this is coming out of Stanford University and my mentor, Fred Luskin. So Dr. Fred Luskin, I'm going to put the resources at the end, but this is the Forgive for Good process based out of his thesis that Stanford University has been using for decades. The mindfulness information that I work around is with Dr. Thao, who's a professor at UH Manoa. So that's the combination of the conversation I'm having with you right here at this point. So there's lots of different ways that people talk about forgiveness, and sometimes we use it as a throwaway word. Just forgive, yeah, without really understanding what it means and in what way we're using it. So this is the secular conversation around forgiveness, because there's a lot of religious overtone and a lot of religious way of talking about forgiveness. That's not my research. That's not what I'm talking about. And so if you have this other way of forgiving, see if this works in tandem. See if this serves you well. This is not about throwing away what you already know. This is how can you learn the things that'll best serve you, right? This is answering the question at the very beginning. Like, what do you want out of life? And are you really doing it? Yeah. So in this way, forgiveness is not about condoning unkindness. Yeah. There's a lot of people who have done terrible things to each other. So this is not about saying that that's okay. It's not forgetting something that's painful that's happened to you. So it's not talking, for me, it's not saying that my pain around losing my mom and my country and my language isn't something that I can be sad about. It's not telling me to forget that. Yeah. That pain is that pain because I feel it in my body. That pain is that pain. This is not about excusing poor, reckless, or violent behavior. This is not that religious, experience. This is not denying or minimizing suffering. This is not about reconciliation. So if I forget, do I need to like love them again or let them back in my life? No, that's not this conversation. It's a different conversation. Forgiveness is not about justice. So if I forgive them, can I still like take them to court? Yes. This is not about justice. And this is not all of us just grabbing hands and going, forgiveness is a good idea. Let's all do it. Yeah. And then tell each other we've done it. And yet in your gut, you still feel the pain or the pang, or you still don't have room for more peace in your life. So this does not exclude or preclude judgment. Yeah. So this is what forgiveness is not. And a lot of times I hear people using this, interchanging it with some of these other words. So I want to make sure that that's uncoupled. So what forgiveness is, in the way that we're talking about it here, is that it's the peace that you feel when you let go of unresolved grievances. Like you all have some story where you're like, I used to be bothered by that, but I've let go. That. There are some stories where that feels like a little bit harder. So this is the methodology to let go of some of the harder stuff. Yeah. But we all have experiences of feeling that peace. So it's about, the question is, do you want to make the choice to do that more often? So this letting go, do you want to choose to do that so that you can reclaim your power, so that you can do this thing called healing? And when I say healing, it's about restoring ourselves to wholeness, which is in the other end of the way that I describe trauma, right? Which is a separation from a feeling of safety. So to me, healing is about restoring ourselves to a feeling of safety, dignity, and belonging. Yeah. So when I say healing, that's what I mean, not in a medical term or anything like that. Okay. So this is this is the process of moving from being a victim in our own lives, thinking that somebody owed us or owes us so that we can live our best life, to going, no matter what is happening out there, I can be the hero of my own story. That's what all heroes' journeys are about. Something terrible happened to them, they kind of reclaiming their life, right? But this is about how we do it in everyday ways. And it's for you, not the offender. A lot of us go, but if I forgive, then I don't want to let them off the hook. It's not about them. It's about you. Do you want to live a life with a little bit more peace, joy, personal freedom? Yeah. And so it's asking you to make that choice. And this process has decided that, yeah, these skills are teachable and learnable, and we can all practice to become better at this thing called letting go, this thing called forgiveness. Yeah. So coupled together, this idea of cultivating mindfulness and choosing to let go is the answer to this problem that we identified at the beginning, which is this problem of suffering, where we're seeing this reality and separate from this expectation that we have, this shooting on each other. And we take it personally and we think about it a lot, ruminate, blame others. So this idea of mindful forgiveness is to allow this to dissolve so that we can live a little bit more peacefully. Yeah. And here I'm going to talk about 7 steps to forgiveness. When you Google Fred Luskin and Forgive for Good, he's going to be talking about 9 steps. Yeah, we have condensed some of these things and worked some of these things together. So in the other talks and topics, and I found this to be really helpful in my own journey, and Fred and the thousands of other folks who have gone through this process. These are the steps that I think is important for you to be aware of and that you can choose to practice starting right now if you wish. So these are the 7 steps. You can take a quick picture, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each one. So the grievance story. If we are professionals and if we have decided that we are the strong and independent type, there's a lot of us that bypass this step. We ruminate in our minds. So I carried a lot of my pain in my head, but I never talked about it. I didn't talk about it with people that I felt safe with. I didn't reach out to a counselor or a therapist. I didn't really even talk about it with my friends. When people would ask me about like my adoption or about, I used to get the question, what are you a lot? Because I was adopted into Spring Grove, Minnesota, the biggest Norwegian population in all of the US. And then me, right? So I used to get a lot of questions or comments or looks around my adoption. So I learned how to just kind of encase myself, like cement myself, calcify myself, so that either I had one or two of responses, which was, who the are you to be asking that? It's none of your business, right? Or I would give the version of the story where I've already figured it all out and I've healed. Yeah, I was adopted, but I got it together now. That, that version. Neither of them were meaningful. Neither of them are true. So the first step is we need to be heard. Your stories need to be told. We need to be felt. If we want any kind of relief, we need to be heard. So that narrative that you might be very sick of because it's been going on in your mind for so long, you can identify it in others too when they start telling you. There's some people who are stuck in this process. They want to tell everybody. Yeah. But for you, the question is, do you hear it in your mind? And have you told people that you trust? Because we want to get out of this repetitive cycle, this repetition, because our brains are, it doesn't categorize problems very well. So I told you my initial story of what it meant to not live on purpose. Yeah, that's the story. But subsequent stories where I feel like I was being left. So every breakup, see, nobody loves me because. So then my brain goes, ooh, men are a problem too, not just mothers, but men are a problem too. And so then our brains just create these big problems, these categories of, be careful of all things that are going to be causing you to feel loneliness or abandonment. Yeah. So in talking about it, in writing it out, in putting it through some process, we can alleviate some of that repetition and that rumination. But more importantly, when we tell our stories to others who can feel and hear us, then we can start to let go. Yeah. The other piece about this is when we're telling our stories, have you ever had this happen? Is you start to tell somebody something and then they jump in to try to save you. They say things like, oh, that's why you're so strong, Joey, is what they would tell me. Oh, see, that's why you're so independent. That's why you got it together, girl. Girl, go get it. You can do that. Don't worry about that. Let that go. And then I would be stuck feeling like, okay, see, that's why I can't tell nobody nothing. Yeah. And there's that deflation because I have not been heard. So telling our stories in places and spaces where we feel safe and where we can be courageous and brave, right? When people aren't jumping in, that's important. But then we'll notice that this big old story that's kind of jumbled up comes out. So then the question is, these stories, these grievance stories are of loss. They're of loss. So the question is, what's your relationship to grieving? Because if we've had a loss up here, I've lost something. And, life is, sorry about that, you guys. Never-ending series of losses. That's what life basically is. So the question is, what's your scenario? What's your relationship to, what's your willingness to grieve? Yeah. We need to be able to grieve. And Dr. Luskin talks about the two problems that he sees with grief is that people try to move on too quickly without having grieved, or they grieve too long. Yeah. And I don't know if about you, but I've definitely have heard people talking like with so much angst and like presence, so much hurt about a loss that happened like 30 years ago. Yeah. Or they stay in a grief group years and years, talking about the same thing as if it was happening right at that moment. So I truly see that quote from him. Me, I was on the other end. I didn't grieve at all because I'm strong. I'm independent. I got to get shit done. I got to, continue to my work. I got to get it paid. Who's going to take care of me if I can't fall apart? Yeah. So what's your relationship to grief? And we got to be able to find that sweet spot. So you might want to get into a grief group or do some therapy work with some counselors. But if you're in those spaces, then part of looking at being able to move forward is the 4 metrics of grief. It's really about, do we have some clarity around that grievance story? Because sometimes we'll say this big grievance story, but we're not really clear on exactly what hurt us. So my adoption story, for me, I can say things like, yeah, it was abandonment. I wanted my mom to, and for somebody else, that adoption story might mean something else. What hurt them about that might be different, right? So for us to get clarity around exactly what in that story has caused us pain, and what are you doing about that? How are you reacting? What emotions are you having? The 4 metrics of grief will help identify and get clarity around what exactly is the problem around our grievance story. Clarity is king here. Yeah, clarity is king. And to be clear is to be kind to oneself. Yeah. So to gain some clarity around our stories is really important. And then after we get some clarity around that, then you might notice, or you might have right at the beginning, some revenge fantasies in your mind. So I get a lot of pushback, or I feel a lot of resistance when I talk about revenge fantasies. So see if this is true for you. So when I said the word revenge fantasies, what came to mind? What were you thinking? Did you have like a sense of pushing away from it? Or, oh, I don't do things like that? Because a lot of us, especially if we've been acculturated into being or socialized as good girls, or this certain kind of culture, we don't do things like that, or this church doesn't speak about things like that. Have you been told, don't think things like that? Or if you speak it, you're going to bring it into life. There's a lot of ways that we try to shun ourselves from leaning into this process. And here's the thing about it is that we know a lot about our brains now. There's a lot of research out there about our brains. And some of it is that it is really negatively biased. So most of the thoughts that happen in our brains are negative. Yeah, it's an effort to keep us alive, because that's the function of the brain, to keep us alive and safe so that we can continue this species. So this idea that we don't have negative thoughts is kind of weird, and to don't think the thoughts that are already in there, that's kind of a weird thing. So here's the guidance around that. It's, you have them. The question is, how willing are you to embrace it? Because in embracing it and speaking it, maybe we can let it dissipate into the sunlight instead of having it fester and mold in your brain, where then it can turn into retaliatory acts. You notice the difference between revenge fantasies and retaliatory acts. We see retaliatory acts all around. And I'm going to just put my 2 cents in there right now, saying, if we had listened to people's revenge fantasies and allowed them to speak and grieve, that we would minimize retaliatory acts that we are seeing currently in our lives. Because who are these retaliatory acts coming from? They're people who feel powerless. Yeah. So revenge fantasies will really shine a flashlight on your relationship to your personal sense of power. People who don't feel powerful will act up. Yeah. So if you can gain a sense of personal power, what might that mean for you? Yeah, so to be able to talk about that without being shunned. And this is particularly, like, I feel particularly sensitive because I work with a lot of people of color, children of color. No matter where we've been, when we say at-risk youth, they tend to be children of color, and they tend to be overwhelmingly boys of color. And when I first dived into this, I was like, oh my gosh, I see what I see out there, because so many kids get expelled, right? And I'll go in there and go, what happened? Because I'm working in alternative programs and schools and things like that. What happened? He's like, oh, miss, this person, Mr. So-and-so, my math teacher, called me out in front of my whole classroom talking about, how I didn't do my homework or something. That's the story I'll get. And I was like, oh, I'm going to just slash your tires and burn your house down. Yeah, that's what I said. And then I got expelled or suspended. So for me, what I hear is that he hurt you really bad, because what teenager wants to be shamed and shunned in front of his whole classmate? Not one, not one. I'm going to give you the answer right there. Not one. Yeah. And so in being shamed and in being hurt and not being heard, he's saying what he would like to do. That's the amount of pain that he feels. And that's how he's going to get his power back. And so when I hear him say that, I'm going to slash his tire and burn his house down, I go, oh God, sounds like he really hurt you. Tell me about it. And in sitting there listening, you can feel it dissipating. I can feel it dissipating. So that then we can do the other things like math and whatever else you want me to do. Yeah. But when he says that, and immediately we go, ooh, children of color, danger, danger, you're going to be expelled, suspended, or this person, oh my gosh, we are doing so much damage. So I really implore all of us to not only go inwards, because we can only do that to others, that which we can do for ourselves. So if we can embrace the wholeness of ourselves and recognize that we all of us, no matter how good we look on the outside, all of us have this, what we might call darkness, but it's just like humanness. Yeah. And it's together that makes the whole human being. Yeah. So what's your willingness to embrace that personal sense of power? Yeah. I'm not encouraging anybody to take retaliatory actions here. That's a no-go. But to embrace all that within is us. And that's a dark too. Yeah. And let it out. And so then now we've kind of let some of the stuff out. We have a little bit more room now. So that for this thing called stress reduction or expansion, because we tend to think that our story is our story, but there's so many sides to it, right? And they've done lots of research around, like the Stanford has done it. I know other university has done it, when they have a whole room full of people and then they have somebody run it and like snatch a purse off the teacher's desk. And then they'll ask for eyewitness counts, right? Everybody's story is different. Everybody's account of what they were wearing, what that was doing, how tall he is, how short he is, if it was a man or a woman, all of that is different, right? We tend to think that ours is right, but there's all of this worlds that's happening. So often that me brain going, me, I was hurt, me, this happened to me. But what about, like, life is just happening and we tend to run into each other. So if I'm driving and I say, ooh, that driver cut me off. But if we just like went into that other car was just switching lanes. Yeah. So these stories of pain that we're telling ourselves, it's just that other people were doing their own life and they just happened to run into you in the same way that you're running into other people's lives. Yeah. So what if it wasn't personal? What if it wasn't about you? Yeah. So that willingness to consider only happens after we've been heard, after we have grieved, after we have kind of unveiled some of our own revenge fantasies. But a lot of us professional likes to go here. It's not about me. Walk a mile in somebody else's shoes and blah, blah, blah. We try to look at the other end, to minimizing our own pain. It's not about that. It's about both and. Your pain is real, and it might not have been about you personally. There might be other stuff going on. Yeah, we got to make space for that through the other first steps. Some of you guys might already know these kinds of images. Yeah, what do you see here? What do you see? Both and is what's happening here. There's some fella playing a saxophone and there's a silhouette of somebody that looks like a woman. What do you see here? A lot of us have seen this. Yeah. You see that young woman kind of turning to her side. And you also see that older woman kind of wearing a headscarf with the feather. Both and exists in this picture. What do you guys see here? So often we'll spend a lifetime fighting for what we see. And this is one of my favorites. Some of us see a new start. And then there are some of us that are like, nope, that definitely says ain't a start. Yeah, but both and, you guys, both and exists. So when you're fighting really hard for your story, just consider and be willing. And if you've been really heard around your story, your willingness to see the other side will increase. That's what the expansion is all about. And then we can start looking at our own values and rules and start dismantling some of them. Because part of the reason that we can get ourselves into trouble in the way that we think is that there are some expectations and demands that we have for each other, for life, for God, for you, for our kids, for our spouses, for our bosses, our workers. We have these rules that we have made up for everything. And a lot of us think that these are our rules, or that it kind of might not even exist, but we have been like socialized into a way of being. Some of the rules that we have around what it means to be who you are has been given to you by all the people who have create you. Yeah, your primary caretakers, your teachers, maybe religious figures, your mentors, all of these people have informed you, right? And then we try to subject other people to live by the rules that you have been given. But nobody is obligated to follow your rules. Everybody's out there trying to do their life. So every time that I should on you, you know what? You should be paying attention to this. And if that rule is really airtight, and that expectation, and I somehow feel like you're not paying attention to me, then I'm going to go, see, what? I always get these kinds of people that never pay attention to me. And I might be thinking about that while I'm speaking. And then I can blame you if I fail at this presentation. And if I engage in that kind of thought process, please know that we are excreting our hormones and all, we're drinking, that's the drinking the poison, expecting the other person to die. So every time I think about that, my adrenaline kicks in, my cortisol level comes up, and that is actually impacting the way that your heart can function. So there's a lot of research tied to, and forgiveness and health. It's one of the people on the advisory board has written Forgiveness and Health, that accounts for like when this happens and we're holding on to resentment and anger around this issue, it detrimentally impacts our heart. So much of heart disease is exactly this: liver disease, depressed immune functions. So this is a literal impact in the physical body. Dr. Gabor Mate, he will be on the list at the end too, does a lot of research in terms of the way that our bodies will react. Even if you are not willing to acknowledge your emotional state, your body will act out. So a lot of these autoimmune diseases, heart diseases, cancers, some of them are directly linked to our inability to express emotion or let some of these things go. Yeah. So how many shoulds do you have? How many of us think that our values are the best values? How many of us think that if you just did it the way that I think you should do it, your life would be so much better? Yeah. But each time we feel angst and pain around that, know that we're drinking a sip of poison and it is detrimentally impacting your physical body. Yeah. So then you want to do some work around letting that go, or that statement right there. And if you have some of the ailments that I just spoke of, there might be some feelings of guilt or shame, like, oh my God, I knew this. Yeah. So self-forgiveness work is absolutely tied to forgiveness work. Because once we start unraveling some of these steps and start leaning into some of the work, we might say things like that. So all of the years that I spent blaming my mom and the country of Korea for all of their misdeeds and, inability to blah, blah, blah. And I was so angry, feeling justified. I was impacting the way I was raising my 3 kids who are now adults. I yelled. I was emotionally not present. I jacked up so many relationships. I moved them from here to there. I did so many things. And I can't help but feel so much around that. Yeah. But I said a while back that guilt and shame is one of the most unhelpful of the emotions. So doing some work to let go of that self-flagellation, that beating myself up, the self-attacking thoughts, all of those that our brain does in an effort to kind of keep us on track. So when I call myself, God, Joey, you're so stupid. I mean, it's terrible words, but some of the effort of the brain is to go, if I remember how terrible you were back then, maybe you won't do it again. Yeah. That's kind of the logic there, but it doesn't serve us very well. So some of the heart center practice, so the gratitude work, the loving kindness work, in cultivating our mindfulness work, that tends to be the most helpful here. So when I notice that I'm attacking myself because I failed in the way that I raised my kids, I didn't fail. They're amazing. They're awesome. Yeah, but our brains are not logical. But when I hear that in my mind, some of my healing work will be, whew, I notice that my brain is trying to help me, right? Okay. Why was I so distant? Why did I drink so much wine? Why did I eat so much food? It's not because I was stupid. It's because my body was in so much pain. Like if you're in so much pain, like doesn't it make sense to escape? Yeah. Like to me, it's like, oh gosh, that was helpful thinking. Of course, if your body is in so much pain or you're in so much emotional stress, why wouldn't we want to escape? And we escape in all kinds of ways. We can point to drugs and alcohol, but we all escape in all the different ways. Some of us escape into inappropriate relationships, sex, Netflix, exercising too much, eating too much, all of the ways, whatever it is that you are escaping, dealing with your own emotions, that is an addiction, like whatever addictions that we have decided to taboo in our current culture. But all of them don't serve us well in living the life that we want to live. So some of this is saying, oh, Joey, you did that because you were in so much pain. And then to sit with myself in that moment and be willing to grieve. Yeah. So you notice that's kind of secular and going back and forth because no healing work is linear, none. Yeah. There's a lot of going back and forth and unraveling. So it's like that spiraling. Yeah. Each time we come back to that lesson, maybe we'll open up a little bit more, or maybe we'll go a little bit deeper into ourselves of knowing, of awareness. That's really important. But above all else, show yourself kindness as you're doing this work. Show yourself compassion while you're doing this work. Above all else, all else. Because if we can have a little bit of compassion for ourselves, definitely we'll be able to show others a little bit more compassion. Yeah, you'll never hear on an airplane, okay, we're losing oxygen. The oxygen masks are coming down. So make sure you put it on everybody around you first. And then if there's one left, put one on yourself. You've never heard that, right? No. And you'll never hear that for a very good reason. Yeah. So you first, oxygen mask for you first, compassion for you first, kindness for you first. Yeah. And then when we've done some work around here, I'm not going to go through all of these. So go ahead and take a snapshot of this. But we are storytelling beings. That's the thing that our brains love to do. That's the skill that was really touted. Before there was writing, it was the storytellers in our communities and our villages that were held in high regard. We are the stories that we tell ourselves. And for so many of us, we tell stories of pain and suffering. What would it feel like to tell a different story where you're the hero, where you're the editor and the creator of your own life? You have to be able to see it, write it, so that we can live it. Yeah. So that unraveling, so that we can rebuild that story that we're really wanting. Yeah. And these are the components to a forgiveness story. So if you want to attempt any one of those steps, just knowing that and going into some research, there's lots of free resources online, and see what it feels like to put yourself through that process, and then see what it tells. So it would be like every time I start hearing that old story come back, I go, okay, Joey, what's my new story? So it's not very like pretty, right? The process at the beginning was very halty. I had to like literally be so serious going, okay, what do I have to schedule those things in to that? And while I was doing it, I felt some of that go to come back to them practicing it a little bit more. So we are the stories that we tell ourselves. So then when we start telling new stories for ourselves, then check, go in and see if you have a little bit more peace and a little bit more joy and a little bit more space for this thing called happiness, so that your intention and attention and people and connection and your savoring can be a little bit different. Because when we are encased or calcified in our story, it's really hard to see new things. Yeah. But like right now, so everybody right now, if you've gone back to multitasking, I'd like for you to stop for a second and look around your room. So I'm going to count to 5. And in that 5 seconds, I want you to look for everything that's blue. So count all blue things in 5 minutes. See how many you can count. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many red things did you count? I'm going to guess 0 because you weren't looking for red. Partly because that's what I told you to do. That was the directions. But we feel like there's lots of directions that we've been given, and our brains will look for all the threats in our lives. So you have to intentionally be willing to look for something different. You have to intentionally want to look for something different, and then your body will follow. So the final question for you is, or not a question, I actually want you to do something. So I'm going to ask you to think about a lemon. Think about the lemon right now. It's really juicy. You can actually feel it. And then I need you to cut open that lemon and like open it. Ooh, it's bursting. Can you see it, feel it, sense it? What's happening to your mouth right now? Anybody starting to salivate? You're salivating. Some of you salivating. I can guarantee some of you, right? And that's the mind-body connection. There's no lemon here. Most of you, I'm guessing you don't have a lemon there, but just the thought of it and just the guidance around picturing that allows your body to follow and start salivating as if you're going to get that in your mouth. Well, that's the same way with what you pay attention to and what your intention is. You start here and then your body will follow. So consider that. And if you can't, because you are overwhelmed, then try putting yourself through some of that process of alleviating and creating more space. And if you're loving that work, here's some resources for you. Yeah. So some of the people that I've mentioned, some of the work that I find really profound, there's so much more. Yeah. But the magic is in the practice. None of this information that I gave you today, none of it's particularly new or groundbreaking. Yeah. But I think, we don't need another resource or research paper to tell us that our problems are our problems. We know our problems are our problems. I'm more interested in is how are we going to practice with each other, feeling safe with one another, to practice some of these tools to feel better so that we can go out and actually do better. And that includes living your life on purpose. So my final thought is, it's up to you. Yeah. And I encourage you to reach out to one another, reach out to me, so that we can co-regulate and help each other to do this thing. This is how we save the world. This is how we have more peace on the planet. I know that sounds melodramatic, but this is how we do it. It starts with us and our family, our community, our state, and then it goes outwards. But it must start with you. I appreciate your time, your energy, and your attention, your presence here so much. So please practice being more at peace. And that is all for me. I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Mahalo, Joey. That was so wonderful. Just a quick reminder, we don't have any questions right now. I think you caught a bunch of us off guard, including me with that color question. So that was good.
I know.
But if there are any questions from the attendees, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A box or the chat box. We do still have a bit of time, and I was actually wondering, since we have time, if you wanted to guide us through a 3-minute mindfulness.
Oh, excellent. I would. I'm just kind of scrolling through this chats right now, though, because I couldn't see them while I was presenting. And so some of these I hear wait, what? I'm like, oh, I wish I could have been there to answer that. Oh, okay. You guys were answering the number questions. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Oh, yeah. That would be awesome. I would love to guide us. Is a 5-minute practice okay?
Yes.
Or we can do a 3-minute practice because that's what I have in mind.
I paused only because there is one question, but I can actually answer this. So there's a question about replaying this, and I'm wondering if that is referring to the training. The answer, if that is actually your question, is yes. So this is being recorded. It will be on the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui's YouTube channel. And so you guys can just, if you go to YouTube, you can type in Hawaii Public Health Training Hui, and our channel will come up, and the video will be there by end of day today. I'll also include the link to our channel in the Mahalo email that I'll be sending to all of you. But yes, let's do a 5-minute mindfulness.
Okay, just give me a moment to set up, please. And okay. And then I want to make sure I share the sound with you. So please go ahead and get into, and I will not be guiding. And part of the reason that I usually don't guide meditation is because I really want you to figure out the tool that works for you, because I can't come home with you. Yeah, but there are a lot of resources out there that'll guide. So please get into a comfortable seat. Notice what's happening to your breath. Notice how your position on your chair is. If you want to lay down, please give yourself permission to lay down. Yeah. And get as comfortable as you can. And your job is just to listen and follow.
Full breathing. Close your eyes and rest your hands on your knees. Bring your awareness to the touch of your body on your seat. Feel the weight of your body on your chair or cushion. Begin by finding a comfortable posture. Lean slightly forward and back to one side and then the other. Find a comfortable balance as you come back to the center. Now, sitting up straight, feel your head on the top of your neck. How can you sit so that your head, neck, and back feel most comfortable? Take a few deep breaths. While you are breathing deeply, relax your shoulders, your stomach muscles, the muscles in your face and your hands, and your legs. Let go of all the tension in your body. Now bring your attention back to your breath. Where do you feel it most? In your nose or your stomach? In the rise and fall of your chest? Just notice where you feel it most and allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now, notice what the breath feels like as it enters through your nose, goes down your throat, filling your lungs, and back out through your nose. Notice your stomach and chest rise and fall with each inhale and exhale, and allow your breathing to be natural and relaxed. Now bring your awareness to the sensation of your breath in your nose. Feel your breath as it comes in and goes out. Just focus on this sensation, paying attention to each inhale and exhale. When your mind wanders or if you become distracted, just notice what's going on in your head and then gently bring your attention back to your breath, going in and out. Focus on the sensation of your breath in the foreground, allowing thoughts and feelings to come and go in the background. Now gently bring your attention back to the touch of your body on your seat and open your eyes.
There we go. Welcome back. So that was on my life. So if you like those or that voice felt nice to you, just YouTube. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Joey. I think this is such a beautiful way to kind of enter into the second half of a Friday and kind of guide us into the weekend. So thank you so much. Um, So again, I just want to say thank you to Joey for being our trainer today. Big mahalo to all of you joining on the webinar. Couple of reminders, I will be emailing out a link to complete the evaluation, which needs to be completed by close of business on Monday, April 19th. For those seeking continuing nursing education credits, please be sure to do the nursing evaluation as well. So you will need to do both hours as well as the nursing evaluation. Certificates will be emailed to you by close of business on Friday, April 23rd. And lastly, we are excited to have our friends Heather Lusk and Kunane Dreyer from the Hawaii Harm and Health and Harm Reduction Center, excuse me, for our May training, and it'll be a train the trainer facilitation training. So I will be sending out information on registration for that very shortly. Again, mahalo to everyone, especially to Joey.
I did see one question that was
Yeah,
very
sure.
specific. Feel free to reach out to me, you guys, because we don't have a whole lot of time here. But my email is available on the website and stuff. So if you have more questions or you need more resources, I'm available. This is my life. So, okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Joey.
so much, Stephanie. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Nursing survey will be sent out in a few minutes as soon as we close the webinar, just to answer the last question in the chat box there. But again, mahalo everyone, and we hope to see you on a future webinar. Aloha.